How you doing? And welcome back to LC 101, where we are learning about data types and variables. Now, we're in 4.1.1, and here, pay attention to this. It's because I am building on a layer here. I'm taking one step at a time to make sure that you're able to comprehend the lesson and this curriculum. So now, as we go back into the lesson, we're at 4.1.1, more on strings. What about values like 17 and 3.2? They look like numbers, but they are in quotation marks like strings. Okay, now let's pay attention to this. I want you to remember to think like the compiler. A compiler can recognize, and it moves very quickly, very fast. So when it sees an opening quote in JavaScript, because remember, JavaScript is dynamic, and we'll teach you more about that later, the difference between dynamic and static, meaning that when the compiler sees a quotation mark, an opening quotation mark, it automatically is going to read everything within after that first quotation mark. And if it doesn't end with a closing quotation mark, it's going to stop. Now, I'm going to teach you a little bit or introduce you to binary numbers later on to show you how this makes sense. But when you see quotation marks, you are going to automatically think string. Remember, string. Okay. Now, run the following code to find out. So you should already have Replit installed and set up. So let's click on that. Now, as I come here to data types, it takes you to this page. When I click on fork, the data type name, it gives me that. So I'm going to fork this Replit. Now here, remember earlier we talked about the type of. It is a keyword. You have to spell it like this. That means it's reserved. You can't use this anywhere else, only in JavaScript. It only understands type of as a reserved keyword. You can't use it as a variable name or anything because it would give you an error. And I wanted to know the type of this particular data type, which looks like the number 17, but it's actually a string. Now we're going to break down console.log a little bit later, but for now, let's see what happens when I run it. String, string. So let me play around with it. Let me take the quotes off. Now let me run it. Okay, a number and a string. So it's going to tell me the data type. And console.log, it has no side effects. So it doesn't have a return value. So we'll explain more about how that works, how console.log works. So what we've learned so far, we learned that a string, anything in between quotes is a string, no matter if it looks like a number. If it has quotes, it's a string. Now, question, what is the type of the value 17 and 3.2? Well, we know it's a string because we've already tested it. Strings in JavaScript can be enclosed in either single quotes or double quotes. We talked about that. Now, here we see another example. I can actually take this right here and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go back over here to my Replit and I'm going to paste it in here. So now when I run it, I get string, string. Notice the example, the reason why I wanted to give you this example, because let's do this. And the book is probably going to show us as well, but I want you to see it. Now you notice I have a starting quote, a single, and I'm ending it with a double. Let me run it. You see the error. It's giving me a syntax error. So the code there, and we're going to tell you the different types of errors. You got to get familiar with these. We're hitting you with a lot of information over the next few weeks. Your brain is going to hurt, but stick with it. And just like working any other muscle in your body, the more you work it, the more it becomes accustomed. And so right now, what your brain may be telling you soon is that this is too much. but you gotta work through it. So, but in order to understand the rules and the principle of JavaScript, you're going to have to play around with the code. Okay, so let's go back. We just saw that, just gave you a demo. So now double quoted strings can contain single quotes inside of them, as in Bruce with a single quote, Beard. We notice that Bruce Beard is in double quotes. It's a string. Anything inside of those quotes is considered a string, and it doesn't make a difference of the space. That's another thing you have to pick up on. There's a space right here. And then it says, and the single quoted strings can have double quotes inside them, as in the kings who says nigh. You can put double quotes inside of a single quote, but it's either got to be either or. It can't have a single quote in the beginning and a closing quote for a double. It can't do that. And it's not going to work either if you try to do this Bruce Beard right here. Let's go ahead and let's play with that. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to pass this into the string Bruce Beard, and I'm console dialoguing, so I don't need this type of, because I don't need to know what the string is, right? What the type is. So let me run it. It says Bruce's beard, and you notice that the quote shows up. But if I do this, let me show you what happens if I do this. If I go ahead and change this to single quotes, notice that I'm getting an error already. You see that little squiggly line right there, and at the end, it has a little error drawn up under it. Let's run it and see what the error says. Syntax error, missing a closing parentheses after the argument list. Pay attention to the coloring because it has a syntax color here. Notice that Bruce is in single quotes. That's letting me know that's correct. But the problem is, after that quote, there's nothing else there. So here I find that in order for me to get that single quote, it's either have to be double quotes on the outside for the opening and closing quote, but it cannot be a single quote and a single quote. What this is telling the compiler is, once it sees this, it goes to the end and finds that other single quote and it stops. And therefore, the rest of this is foreign. The reason why it's telling you it's missing a closing parenthesis, because it's expecting this to look like that right there. And so let me get rid of this for you. That's what it's expecting. And so now if I run this, I get Bruce. So now I go back, I put that back in like it was. And as you can see, what happens if I do it this way? You see I have an error right there, right? And it's expecting, let's see what it reads. Let's read the error. It says syntax missing after argument list. Now, this is what you got to understand. Notice I can't put two sets of quotes inside of a string because we're going to talk about primitive data types. This is illegal because this is two data types right here. I don't know if you picked up on that, but this is why it's important to play around to see what errors you get and to get an understanding why you got that error. So here, JavaScript doesn't care whether you use single or double quotes to surround your strings. Once it has parsed the text of your program or command, the way it stores the value is identical in all cases. And the surrounding quotes are not part of the value. If a string contains a single quote, say such as Bruce's beard, then the surrounding it with the single quotes give unexpected results. And we just demoed that right there. Okay. Now, we've come to the end of 4.1.1. Now, again, this might have gone over your head. You might not truly fully understand this yet, but that's okay. What I want you to always remember, you can always come back to this video. Don't stop here. Keep going to the end of the chapter and then come back and review this to get more of an understanding. Your brain is only retaining maybe 10 or 15% of this. So don't worry. It's going to come, because the more you practice, the more you improve. See you in the next video.